Hello, welcome to the Fairy Whispering podcast. I'm Claire Casey, and my guest today is a very wonderful Melanie Stevens, and she is a spiritual teacher and tarot reader. And she's got several things that we're going to talk about today. She's got a really interesting story about how she became a spiritual teacher and some of the things that she does, which are amazing. So I'm Melanie. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank
Okay.
you. And thank you for having me
Yeah.
on today. My name's Melanie. I'm in Bobby Tracy in Devon and working as a spiritual teacher, like Claire was saying, and also a tarot reader. And my business, although I'm based in Devon, I work remotely. So I've got clients in America, I've had clients in Australia as well as in the UK. So I predominantly work in this way remotely, doing courses and teaching. I teach Reiki, I teach shadow work, I teach people how to work with crystals, and I'm just about to write my next course, which is on intuitive card reading with tarot and oracle cards. And I'm also a qualified tarot reader as well.
Fantastic. Wow, so much to offer. And what's your website?
So my website is my name, so it's www.melanie-stevens.com, and Stevens has a V.
Okay, thank you. I will put those details in the notes for the show as well, and comments for the description. So, shall we start with your journey to become a spiritual teacher? And a little bit about what you see as a spiritual teacher being and how you got there. How did this all start?
It's interesting, and I was only saying this to somebody the other day that really everything in my life has kind of got me to where I'm at now, and I feel like this is the case with many of us. That I might have had jobs that don't relate to spiritual teaching. I might have lived a normal life, if you want to call it normal, but everything I've done and I've learned has got me on the path I'm on now, one step at a time. And I would say the catalyst was when I was 28 and I did suffer an emotional breakdown. I just couldn't get out of bed. I left my job. I couldn't face life. I'd been plagued with anxiety, panic attacks, and depression since I was about 14. And it just got too much. I couldn't cope. And I was in a job that wasn't right for me, and I'd moved from a job that also wasn't right for me into another one. My career is really important to me, so I was worried that I was ruining my CV. I was looking like I didn't know what I wanted, but I didn't know what I wanted. And I just felt really fed up with life. I didn't feel like I'd achieved what I wanted to achieve. There was no satisfaction there. And it really, really got me down. So I then went to a life coach, a spiritual life coach, who was recommended to me by a lady in the job I went to that wasn't right for me. So actually it was, because I realized now that if I hadn't gone to that job, I wouldn't have met her, I wouldn't have met the spiritual life coach, etc., etc. So everything led to me meeting her at that moment when I needed her the most. And I worked with her for 3 months, and she was brilliant. She helped me through so many phobias, fears, anxiety, just not being able to cope. My nervous system was shot. I couldn't cope with life. And she taught me some tools that I didn't realize at the time were spiritually based, because I didn't know really what I was going to get. She didn't actually market herself as a spiritual life coach. She marketed herself as a life coach, but she taught me EFT tapping, which is working. It's an energy. It's energy healing, because you're working with the meridians, with the
Yes.
energy points in the body. So she taught me EFT tapping. She taught me the Sedona method, which is a method to manage your emotions that was created by a chap called Lester Levinson, who had a spiritual awakening, and that's where the Sedona method came from. So all of the modalities she was teaching me, and there was something else. What was it called? EMSR, which is eye movement.
Yeah.
All of these different methods, but the ones that really stuck with me were the EFT and the Sedona method. Once I was kind of feeling like I could function as a human again in the world and I could go out, She let me know about a job that she'd seen advertised that she thought was perfect for me, working for a charity. And I met a couple of other people that I knew who were related to the charity, and everything fell in place for me. And I found basically at the time what was my dream job, and I was there for 12 years. So that solved that problem. So not only did she help me by teaching me all these things, she actually found me the perfect job, which gave me so much joy, and I learned so much when I went to work for the charity. So she really sort of set me on my path. And she also had a page on her website called Recommended Reading. And this was books by people like Eckhart Tolle,
Mhm.
The Power of Now and The New Earth. And it was, there was, what else was the Conversations with God was on there. There was quite a few, A Course in Miracles, very well-known spiritual books, The Secret by Rhonda Byrne about the law of attraction. So I love learning and developing, so I was just absorbing all of this knowledge and really getting into the spiritual subjects. And then in my new job, some of my colleagues were into that kind of thing. They would go and see mediums. I'd never really experienced anything like that, not since my own experiences as a young child. So that opened the door to mediumship and made me question life after death. So it really set me off on this journey. And then that continued, but I carried on just doing my thing with my job, living my life, with an interest in spiritual subjects without anything more than that, until 2019, when I felt a nudge from somebody unseen to go and have some Reiki. And then I felt another nudge to start learning it very quickly
Mm.
afterwards. And I'd only actually had 2 Reiki sessions before I started learning it. So it's not like I was having Reiki for years and years. I just felt like I wanted to learn it. Didn't think about it becoming a new career, just went for it.
Mhm.
And I was about to set my Reiki practice up. And a month after that, COVID happened, lockdown happened. So that scuppered all my plans. So I thought, well, I might as well do the Reiki master course. That I was going to just get some experience first before I went and did the higher level studying. But I thought, well, now I can't do it. I might as well do that. So I carried on that journey, and then finally set my business up in May 2021. So it's 2 years old now. I started doing Reiki rather than teaching it.
Mhm.
I realized that my passion is communicating, and I love learning. I'm a massive geek. I love courses. I'm constantly reading books, doing courses. That's what excites me. And so I've got all this knowledge, and it's like, why are you keeping all this to yourself? You need to share this with the world. And as you like communicating, why don't you teach? And I've done bits of training with people in my career. I was an HR manager, so I'm used to training people. Always had good feedback about how I managed to take something maybe slightly complex and simplify it so it's easy to understand. So then I started writing courses, and I've got 3 now. I've got 2 on Udemy, the platform. One in teaching people how to work with crystals, how to meditate with them, how to really attune to their energy. And I love my crystals. I've got crystals on my desk. I've got them everywhere, all around me all the time. Then I created a course in shadow work. I've got a Reiki course on my website. And I am a tarot reader as well. I started learning the tarot about 4 years ago. And now I'm feeling called, as well as doing readings, to start teaching that as well. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So quite a lot. You've got loads to offer, and I'm inspired by what you were saying about using Udemy for your courses. I mean, that's a brilliant way to share knowledge, isn't it? That's something I'm thinking of exploring. This is about you, but it's just made me think, yeah, I need to get my stuff on there as well. Just want to go back because you mentioned childhood experiences. Would you mind sharing some of those?
Yeah, of course. So,
Yeah.
um, like many people that are sort of spiritually aware, I had experiences as a child, and they frightened the life out of me, and I shut them off. And I think a few people have had something similar. So, I was an extremely sensitive child, and this is where my anxieties, I think, came from, because I just struggled to cope with the world.
Mm.
And when I was 6 years old, this was the first time I actually saw something. I was in my bedroom at home with mum and dad had gone to bed, and my brother was asleep, and I was being a little bit naughty because I should have gone to bed and gone to sleep, but I was wide awake this night, which is very unusual for me. I don't remember this being a regular thing. My dad had tucked me in and gone to bed, and I just thought, no, I'm not tired. So I sat up, and I'd got these stickers that in the 80s you could get stickers that were filled with air, so they felt quite nice to press. So because I'm quite tactile, I was touching these stickers and pushing them in and making them make noises and stuff. And then all of a sudden, I heard a horse's hooves walking along like a cobbled street. Completely random. I wasn't into horses as a child, never ridden one until I was like in my 20s. So I turned round, and in my bedroom wall, like a window appeared that wasn't actually there normally. I
Mm.
could see a horse pulling a cart on like an old cobbled street, which wasn't my actual street, wasn't old or cobbled at all. So it was very random. And I'm, 6 years old. I didn't know what to do. I was a bit freaked out by it. So I've got this very loud noise of the horse's hooves in my head, and then a horse appeared in front of me in my bedroom.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, a full-sized horse, and I'm 6, and I'm
Mm.
tiny. And it was a brown horse, beautiful horse,
Oh.
that kind of faded in. It didn't like that appear. It,
Mm.
it like
Mhm.
faded in, stood looking at me. I was like frozen looking at it in shock. And then it just kind of faded out and disappeared. And then the noise stopped. It all happened in like 20 seconds, probably. And I remember getting out of bed, and I walked over to where the horse had been, and I did that to see if I could feel it, because it was physically there in front of me. And I did my put my hands through the air. There was nothing there. Visibly it had gone. I went running into my parents' bedroom crying because I was really scared. And I didn't sleep for many weeks after that. So
Mm.
it did, I mean, now I would completely welcome that experience because I would understand a bit more about it. But it did terrify me. So
Mm.
I didn't see anything in front of me after then, until much later. But I think that's because I shut it down because I just couldn't cope with it. I was too sensitive to be able to handle it.
Yeah, sounds, I mean, I'm just thinking about as well the state of mind you're in because you said you were pushing in those puffy stickers. I mean, I remember those in the 80s, the puffy stickers and scented rubbers, and it's very sort of sensory stuff, isn't it?
Yeah,
So, like, you almost sounds like you're in a very meditative state, and then that's when this window opened
yeah,
onto this parallel reality. Um, if that's what ghosts are, I mean, I feel that it's like a snapshot into other times rather than something, a remnant of the past, if you see what I mean. That's what I feel it is. I don't know what
I
you
do as
feel.
well.
Yeah.
And for me, it is, because everything's happening simultaneously. Of course, we find it difficult to get our heads around that, which is why we experience linear time. Our
Mm.
minds have to be able to make sense of the world and what's happening. But we talk about past lives, which I believe are happening now. Everything's happening now.
Mm.
And I believe, because I've seen a few things in meditation since, that the horse was with me in another life. I was
Yeah.
peering into that. Or it was a horse in spirit who wanted to come back and say hello because I've
Mm.
been with that horse in another life.
Yeah.
I just didn't recognize it in my physical form now. Um,
Isn't that amazing? Sorry, have a drink. Yeah. Isn't that amazing that the horse recognized you? Like it was saw you there. It wasn't like you were just walking past each other, not aware of other's existence. It's acknowledged you.
yeah, it was definitely a visit. It
Mm.
literally stood there and looked at me. So it definitely, the horse knew I was there
Mm.
as much as I knew the horse was there. Um, which, if it happened now, I would attempt to communicate because I'm learning animal communication now. Actually, I'm doing a course, and I would attempt to communicate with it. But at 6 years old, I didn't, and I didn't really have any. we didn't have pets, so it
Mm.
didn't make sense to me that it would be an animal that visited me, because most of the pets we tried to have, my mum was allergic to them. So we struggled to have animals. So I wasn't even at the time. I love animals now, and I've been surrounded by them my whole adult life. But as a child, I wasn't. So
Mm.
there was no logical explanation for a horse choosing to visit me in this lifetime unless we had been connected on a different plane, or we still are connected on a different plane. But
Yeah.
connection with that horse, but not in this physical lifetime. So
Mm.
very
Have
interesting.
Have you ever tried to re-establish that connection
I
with it?
haven't. I have asked questions about why has the horse come through, and then I've had a visit, a reading from a medium, and she said, "Oh, I've literally just seen a horse's face, and I've no idea why." And so I had that little like, it's like they're dangling a carrot, sort of encouraging me to keep going with it. So now I'm doing animal communication.
Yeah.
I'm still learning it, but I know how to do it. So I might actually connect and see if I can
Mm.
make contact.
Yeah, perhaps he or she is some kind of a guide for you, maybe.
Yeah, I'm wondering that, a power animal, but with,
Yeah.
some sort of connection to me from
Mm.
some lifetime. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a very powerful ally for you, isn't it? And
Yeah.
yeah, I was just talking to somebody yesterday. We were talking about fairies and fairy experiences and how some people never see anything, never see a fairy or a ghost or whatever in their life, but maybe feel presences. And I said my sort of take on it, she agreed, is that these beings show up perhaps visibly sometimes or show signs in other ways, just like you say, to encourage us to keep trusting that we're on the right path, or just say, look, yeah, we are still here. Keep going. So, like your horse, maybe, if all time is happening at once, then, yeah, it's very much a present being for you now as it was when you were six. It's just there. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think the fact that it's a horse as well, I mean, for me, I always keep in mind that everything is energy. Nothing is actually
Mm.
as we perceive it to be. This is just our human senses. Everything is energy. And the horse's energy is that of power and strength. So maybe
Mm.
that is my power animal, because that's the energy I need to tap into in this lifetime. And if you're seeing fairies, maybe you need that playful, light, joyful energy in your life. Maybe that will benefit you more. And maybe this changes. Maybe the power animal or the power being that we're presented with at one point in our life might sort of fulfill its purpose. And then
Mm.
we're presented with a different, because again, it's fairy energy is different to horse energy, is different to,
Yes.
spirit energy or a loved one's energy. Just as we've got our own personalities and our own type of energy, so have all of these other beings, and they're all here to help and support us if we want them to. But they
Mm.
won't interfere, I find, as well. They won't make them force themselves on somebody that's not.
No. No. Yes. I recognize that as well. Unless we open ourselves to them and say, yeah, I I want to find out a bit more about you, then that's when they tend to come forward, isn't it? So, talking about strength and courage, be a good time to perhaps talk about your journey to become a spiritual teacher through this dark night of the soul that you went through. And I mean, you don't have to go into detail if there's anything you don't want to share, but it'd be good to, because I know this is a very common thing. It's like a rite of passage for many of us, part of human experience. So I'm interested in how that helped you to move to where you are now.
Yeah, and this is another, it's another part of the spiritual journey. And I think, when we think about our spiritual awakening, anybody that's not had a spiritual awakening probably thinks, "Oh, that sounds wonderful." very rarely is. It's really quite painful. And much as I was introduced to spirituality, well, I was introduced to spirituality through pain. I mean, that's why I went to see the life coach in the first place. And then my journey was a lot nicer and a lot more comfortable. And I was armed with those tools that I needed to be able to cope with being a sensitive person and to be able to cope with being an empath and being a sponge for everything that goes on around me. The spiritual tools I learned helped with that. And then I got to a stage, I'm trying to think of the year, it started in 2019. A lot happened in 2019. And of course, we had COVID the year after. So I had 3 dogs, and my littlest one passed away at the end of
Oh,
2017, and she had a disease. We got her from Crete, one of the Greek islands.
ooh,
Met her
oh,
up there, and we flew her over, and I felt horribly guilty at the time, thinking a plane flight can't be nice for a dog. Should we be doing this? But they die on the streets out there because they're not looked
yeah,
after. And many of them have diseases, many of them have broken bones, they've been hit by cars and bikes, and they're just left. So yes, it's a bit traumatic to fly them over to the UK, but she had 4.5 years over here with us that she wouldn't have had if we'd left her out in Greece, because she has an incurable disease called leishmania, which
mm,
you get from sandfly, very common in countries like Spain and Greece. We don't tend to get it over here, because it comes from the sandfly. And we managed to get her some medication. We got her to the vet. We got her healthy. She was very skinny when we rescued her. Gave her a lovely life, and she had as long as she could with the incurable illness that she had. And we had
mm,
4.5 wonderful years. But she got quite sick, and got very skinny, and it was quite traumatic to watch her go through that, and awful, obviously, to lose her. So then that was horrible. And that was at the end of 2019. And I remember saying, well, hopefully 2020 will be a lot better. And of course, 2020 was the year that COVID hit the world. So 2020 was awful, but that was the
mm,
year a lot of people started looking towards the spiritual side of things because of what was happening.
yes,
So 2020 for me, at the beginning of the year, my mum's husband was in hospital for quite some time. He was very poorly. He came out of hospital, he went back in, he came out, and then he was told he'd got 12 months to live. And we knew he wasn't going to make old age because of all of his health conditions, but we weren't expecting anything quite that soon. And that was, he was diagnosed in March and told, you've got 12 months. And he
mm.
passed away in June, 3 months later.
Oh
So
my gosh. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that about
yeah,
your dog as
definitely.
well. Yeah.
It wasn't long after Georgie, and then we
Mm,
just didn't realise Andy was going to go that quickly. And then, of course, my mum went through the grief of losing her husband, which is just awful. And I had to try and help my mum as best I
mm,
could just by
mm,
being there. You can't stop grief; it's a natural process, so you kind of have to just comfort and
mm.
allow it out. So that was really stressful and upsetting. And then I came down with what might have been COVID. I don't know what it was. I was in bed with flu-like symptoms for a week. I felt really poorly. Came through that. And then in the middle of lockdown, we decided we needed to sell our house and downsize because our income had been hit because of COVID. My husband works in sales, so he got a low basic, and he would make commission because he couldn't go out and sell. He was just on his basic salary, which didn't cover our bills, even with my salary. So we were getting behind. We were getting in debt. We said, well, we're going to have to downsize. We're going to have to sell the house. Trying to sell in lockdown wasn't easy. We had to wait for lockdown to finish so that the estate agent could come and take the photos and quickly put it on before we got locked down again. And we did manage to sell. We had a very stressful house move that took 4.5 months, again because of COVID. Everything was slowed down. It was really stressful. Moved into our new house, and I thought, okay, hopefully now things will come down, and they didn't. So I had a really awful Christmas. We moved in here, it rained. I remember it raining every day for 2 weeks. Every day it was dark, there was no daylight, there was no sunlight. It was awful.
Mm.
And then my eldest dog, Safi, who'd got dementia and arthritis, and she lost her hearing, her sight was going, she was quite
Oh,
poorly. She passed away then in the April, so that was 4 months after we moved in.
oh
Um,
gosh.
and then 3 months
Mm.
after that, our other dog passed away as well. She
Oh
I mean,
Gosh.
she was also older. She
Mm,
was 13. She'd got
mm,
arthritis. She couldn't get up and down stairs. She kept falling over. She got a heart murmur. So she was again, we kind of knew it was going to happen. It just all happened literally one thing after another, after another, after another. Um, so, so it was just the dark night of the soul is not a
mm,
night. It's a
mm.
period of time in our
Yeah.
lives when everything seems to crumble. And some people face loss. They lose their home. They lose their job. They get made redundant. They go bankrupt. They have physical death around them. They have a terminal illness. It's when we start to question our own mortality and our own purpose because we're plunged into the darkness. And in that pit of despair, the only thing you can do is try and find the light because you just want to get out of it. And that's
Mm,
when you start opening up even more to spirituality and the stuff that helps us to cope with when we're in the dark. Thankfully, I've got quite a lot in my spiritual toolbox that I was able to use, but it doesn't stop grief, it doesn't stop pain. Having the knowledge of the other world and knowing that our loved ones are okay definitely helps and it comforts us. But the
mm,
process is exactly the same as it was 10 years ago. It's a physical process, the grieving process. It's accompanied by physical symptoms and it's part of being human.
mm.
It just seemed to happen relentlessly for a period of time, which takes its toll. Um,
Yeah. I mean, gosh, it's yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? What we can survive as humans just when, and I so know that, I expect that so many people can relate. And I've had my own dark nights of the soul over the years because it's not necessarily just the one, is it? And like you
no,
say, they can last for a few years, maybe
yeah.
for some people. Some people it could be a few months, could be a few years. Um, so gosh, so where did you go from there? What I mean, how did you move forward from this place of grief and
Well,
despair?
yeah, this is when the
Yeah.
spiritual toolbox was really important because in
Mm,
the middle of all of that, I decided to well, it was just before Georgie passed actually. I started to wean off antidepressants because I've been on
mm,
antidepressants, started learning Reiki, and I thought, you know what, I can't rely on pills. This is not sensible. The doctor was quite happy for me to stay on them forever and actually even told me that you can stay on these forever. I don't want to put chemicals in my body for the rest of my life, and I don't want to rely on numbing medication. It's not a healthy way of dealing with things. All it does is numb you through life. You might as well not be here. So I thought, no, they were helpful for a period of time, and I'm certainly not knocking anybody for taking them. Sometimes you need something because you just can't function, but they're not meant to be something you stay on forever. So I thought, I don't need these anymore. I've got tools to be able to help me. I'm going to start coming off them. So I started coming off the medication very, very slowly, which was awful because weaning off pushed me back into depression, which was quite uncomfortable, which I wasn't expecting because I did it really gradually as well, but it was still quite tough. So, but I thought, I've got Reiki. I've got
mm,
Reiki, I've got EFT, I've got stuff. I don't need medication. So I weaned off the antidepressants and really, really used my Reiki and my healing and my energy healing to try to help me through all of the darkness. And that's all I could do really, because I couldn't stop what was happening. I had to accept it, get into the present moment, accept it as part of life, and just keep going. And I think it's the determination that suddenly seems to arise out of nowhere when you need it the most. You just feel like, just keep going, just get through another day, just get through another day. And eventually the grief starts to ease and you start to be able to enjoy life again. But you have to dig into that strength at the time. And
mm.
I always think of the tarot when I think about the journey, because there's a tarot card that describes everything we experience in our lives and on our spiritual path. And the destruction that we experience is the Tower card, when everything comes breaking down.
Yeah. Hmm.
And when you go through that, you need the Strength card, which is about tapping into that courage that you've got within you to get you through it and to stay determined. because once you come through the tower moment in the tarot, the card that follows it is the sun, which is all about
Mm,
joy and rejuvenation and bringing some hope back into your life. So
mm,
you have to know that things are going to get better because they always do.
yes.
It can just be a little bit like this. And every time I said things are going to get better, then they got worse. And I say they're going to get better now, and then they got worse. But I kept saying it because eventually it all stopped and things did, return to some sort of normality.
Yeah.
You've just got to have that courage and use your spiritual tools to get you through it and know that the brighter days will return, but you
Mm,
might be in your dark night of the soul. And what is it that you're being called to look into if you are in the midst of a dark night of the soul? What do you feel drawn towards? Do you feel drawn towards a spiritual modality or a book or an author or a teacher? Is there something you're feeling called to do? Because that might be what you need to help you get through the darkness.
mm, yeah. For me, during lockdown, which was, well, it was a huge grieving process for many of us, um, I realized that I needed to record some meditations that I'd been journaling about connecting with the fairies. So I taught myself how to use Audacity. I did on Udemy actually. I did a little course, short course about how to record meditations, which was brilliant. So I thought, right, I know what I'm doing now. Got all the tools. Um, but then that led to me thinking, actually, I want to do a podcast. Now I know how to do that. So yeah, so ways lead on to ways, don't they? It's like during that quiet time, I thought, well, this is a perfect recording studio because it's so quiet.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, time to record.
Yeah. So yeah, so
Seen that.
it's
And I need to look at
mm,
Audacity a bit more because I have got it, but I don't really know what I'm doing with it. I used an app called Mindist to record meditations, which is quite an easy app to use to
oh right.
put your voice, and then you add the gaps afterwards, so you kind of make it the length you want it to be, which is quite good. But yeah, I want to have a look into Audacity because I love doing meditations. All my courses, I record at least one meditation because I feel like that sometimes you can listen to people talk and you can absorb
Mm,
and you can understand, but that's when the magic happens, when you actually go into that deep space within and then
mm,
feel or you see or you hear or whatever you're experiencing. I do it with crystals as well. I do crystal meditations and I really get to feel the energy of the crystal when I listen to the meditation that I've recorded because I go really deep and then I'm shown things or I feel things in my body and then I know, this is what this crystal is going to help me with because I've experienced it through meditation. So I'm a big fan of meditation. You can get so many benefits from doing it.
mhm. Definitely. And I'm interested in your crystal course because I'm really called. I mean, I've got loads of crystals all over the house, and recently they've been calling to me to sort of reconnect with them and learn more about them. So yeah, where can I find your crystal course?
So it's on Udemy, but I can give
Uh,
you a link to it if that's,
yeah, that'd be great for anyone else that's interested as well.
yeah,
Um,
wonderful.
Especially with the connection with fairies as well in the elemental realm. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, and from what I understand about the elementals, the fairies, the gnomes, all of the different elementals, the sylphs, the undines, they are the protectors of the elements and of nature. So they've got that strong connection. So, and particularly fairies, are fairies connected to the earth element?
It depends what type of fairy they are. So the gnomes are connected to the earth, and the pixies. Then there's the sylphs, which are the air fairies,
Mhm.
and salamanders, the fire fairies. Yeah, and there's the water fairies like the mermaids and the undines, the water spirits. Mm.
The connection with crystals and the earth fairies would be pretty strong, I would think. And I love.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got one here. I'm sitting playing with it as I'm talking to you. I've got this is I think this is aquamarine. It's a raw piece, but I like the shape because it's like a little pyramid.
Oh, nice. I think is it a sparkly one? I've got green sparkly one. That's one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, this
Oh
one's
no.
got no, it's more
Oh, I see. It's yeah.
matte, and it's just got bits of white in it. I mean, it's I've got some really pretty crystals. This one's gorgeous. This is my focus crystal fluorite. So I have
Oh,
it on my desk when I'm working, and I just love the colour.
is it a pyramid?
It
Pyramid
is
shape.
kind of, yeah.
Lovely. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, pyramid. I'm really drawn to pyramids. Uh,
Yeah,
but I like raw crystals at the moment because they feel like they've literally just come straight out of the earth and they haven't been sort of polished and tampered with. Um,
yeah.
and some people believe raw crystals have more power. I don't think they do. I think the strength of the crystal is the same no matter what's happened to it. I
Mm,
do like the feel of something that feels rough and raw because it feels earthy and it connects to
yes.
the earth.
Yeah. Wow. So, what else would you like to speak about? We were going to talk about signs and synchronicities, I think, as well, unless there's anything else you want to say about crystals. Um,
Um,
we've got time, how much? Yeah, let's
yeah,
talk
I
about.
think the only other thing I would say with the crystals is just a tip really, and this is something that if anyone's interested in doing
Yeah.
the course, then
Mm,
this is all part of the course as well. But what I started doing is a journal with crystals, and if you've got quite a few different types, this is a really good exercise. Is I've recorded a meditation with the course that takes you deep within to connect with the energy of the crystal, so that you can allow the crystal to show you images in your mind, feelings in your body, or bring words and thoughts into your mind about how that crystal
mhm,
can help you. And then I write it down. And I've got a book with a page for each of the crystals I've got, and I write down what I experience in that meditation. So then, when I'm looking for a crystal that energizes me, I can flick through my book. And for me, this particular type of crystal made me feel energized when I held it in meditation. A crystal that calmed and soothed me, right? Well, I flicked through and oh, this crystal felt very soothing when I held it. And as much as you can buy books about crystals that tell you what they do, I believe we also have our own personal journey with crystals. Because although crystals' energy is the same, if I hold on to one piece of crystal and then I say you hold it, the crystal has the same energy no matter who's holding it. But your energy is different to my energy. So we will have our own unique journey with that particular crystal. So I do encourage people when they're working with crystals to, yes, it's useful to have a book and to go online, but find your own way with crystals through meditation to
mhm,
establish what that particular crystal does for you, because it might not be the same as you're
mm,
reading your crystal book. You might think, well, it didn't feel like that when I held it. So it's better to use it based on how it made you feel, not what a book tells you it's going to make you feel.
mm. I definitely believe in that. With anything in the sort of spiritual side of things, whether it's angels, fairies, crystals, whatever you're working with, it's always best to go on your own intuition because I'm a bookaholic. I've got so many, so many books about fairies and folklore and every subject you can imagine, but mainly fairies. And I read through and I think, well, this is really interesting. I've learned a lot from that, but yeah, I need to trust my own experience of this. Like you're saying, it's about it's good to pick up the basic facts about things, isn't it? Where crystals come from, etc. But like you're saying, we have our own journey with these different beings.
Exactly, yeah, and I think I
Mm,
mean I think as a human we do have a thirst for knowledge, and the
mm,
books can satisfy that thirst. I like learning; it's
yeah.
satisfying for me. So there is a joy to be had with learning, but
Mm,
I don't want to just read something and then repeat. For me, I read it, I absorb it, I understand it. Then I have my own experience, and that's when I'm then ready to share it with other people. And I think learning about things like crystals, where do they come from, what gives a crystal its energy, that stuff's really interesting. And I
mm,
like that satisfies that inner geek that I'm like, well,
yeah.
why has it got energy? I like to understand things like that. But once I've got the basics, then I'm ready to have my own experience and my own journey with them. Same with fairy energy. You can read about it, but once you've understood this is what people mean when they use this word, and this is what the various purpose is and what they do, and this is the type of energy. You need to experience that energy for yourself for
Mm.
really for it to really sort of sink in, because you've not only read about it, you've felt it, you've seen,
Yes.
you've experienced it in your own unique way, and then it's more impactful. And then when you talk to other people about it, you've had that lived experience. It's not just something you've read in a book. It's deeper than that.
Yeah, exactly. And it is that connection as well, isn't it? So pull things out of the ether sometimes when I expect you do this when you're teaching um, stuff that you haven't read about. It's just coming from the ether to you.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah. And you open that can and you say something and think, oh,
Yeah.
that's not me. That's not come from me.
Fabulous. Um, did you want to say anything about signs and synchronicities?
I love signs and
Yeah.
synchronicities. I get so excited. And I seem to be hearing from a lot of people who aren't normally open to spirituality that they are seeing repeated numbers and the stuff that
Mm.
I take for granted. I see it all the time. Me and my husband, we always have a bit of a laugh with each other because we're constantly seeing numbers on petrol gauges and clocks and signs and on the telly, and we see it all over the place. But even like my mum's not massively into spirituality, she's quite open to it. But she said, "Oh, I keep seeing all the ones at the moment. I keep seeing lots of numbers, and I don't know why." And then I've got friends messaging me saying the same thing, and it's so exciting because we're catching these little glimpses of these synchronicities that remind us that all is not just the physical. It's not just what we see. It's what's going on behind the scenes. And that for me is what these repeated numbers are. These are just little messages from your guides, little messages from the universe that reminds me that we are working with the universe to create this life. And that's
Yes.
what all these messages are here to remind us. And, I'll go for a walk and I'll be in my own head thinking about something. And I'll have set an intention for spirit to show me a sign. And then suddenly, literally right in front of my face, a robin will fly past me, flapping to try and catch my attention. The other day, one came into the shop I was in with my mum. It literally flew
Mm.
into the shop and stood right in front of us. And everybody stopped and looked at this robin as if to say, where does this come from?
Amazing.
And I love things like that. It just gets me out of my head and reminds me, like, okay, this isn't just me creating this life. I'm working with unseen beings all the time, and they're showing me that they're around me with these numbers and signs. And I see things in the clouds, I see things in the rocks, I see faces in everything, everywhere, all around,
Mm.
all the time.
Oh, yeah, we were talking about that, weren't we? First time we had a chat
Yeah.
about, because that's something that I see loads of when I'm out in nature. I see faces in trees, in rocks, symbols, and I photograph them and then I mirror them. And then it creates even more these amazing patterns
Oh,
and even
wow.
more symbols and faces come out of it. So yeah, when I'm in nature, I might see like half a face, like half an eye, like an eye and part of a nose, and then I photograph it, mirror it, and then it creates this whole face, but then all these other symbols as well. It's incredible. It's really fun.
Yeah, it is fun. I love it. And every time I take a photo where there's some clouds, I zoom in and have a look afterwards because I always see something in the clouds. And if I'm in the
You,
garden, yeah,
yeah.
all the time. But I keep seeing the number three in the clouds. I saw it again. I took a photo and said to my husband, "Look, there's that three again." And I've seen it, a really crystal clear number three in the
Yeah.
clouds a while ago.
Oh gosh.
And for me, number three, again, because I'm a tarot reader, I link it to tarot.
Mm.
It's all about harmony and celebrations and spending time with people and having fun. It represents for me the inner child. So when I see that three and I'm out in nature, it's saying have some fun, enjoy it. This is your playground. You need to stop working and go and do something fun. So that's that nice
Yeah.
nudge for me when I see the threes. That for me, that's what that means.
I see 1111 a lot.
Yeah.
Especially me and my best friend from school. She lives in Birmingham, but we WhatsApp each other, and the amount of times we've sent a message at the same time, exactly 11:11.
My friend did that to me literally 2 nights ago. She messaged me at
Uh,
11 p.m.
yeah.
Said, "Have you seen the time you've sent that?" And that happens a lot because I don't look at. I just message people. I don't even have a watch, so I'm really
Mm,
not aware of the time unless I'm looking for it because I have to look for it because I've got something coming up.
mm,
I'll message in Messenger or WhatsApp and they'll reply, "Have a look at what time you sent that." And I get that a lot because they see the double figures and
yeah.
I just hit send and then they say, "Just check that message you've just sent." It's all the time. It's really funny.
Yeah. Amazing. So there are all these little signs around us to show us that we're not alone. Um, and that's something else that we can draw on in these difficult times, isn't it? But I think we need to remind ourselves to do that because we'll have little reminders, but it's really easy to forget all of these things when we're in a difficult place, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that when we're in a difficult place, we're more in our heads. Um,
Mm,
yeah, it's even harder to notice them when you're in a dark place. But they're there to help. I
yeah.
and when I ask for them, I see even more. In fact, I played a little game with my husband recently, and I said, he said, "Oh, I keep seeing fours at the moment." I said, "Well, come on, let's play a game with the universe. We want to see fours. Show us fours." And honestly, when we finished the day, my husband had gone out to work and I was here, but the amount of things we kept taking screenshots and photos of things where four just kept popping up, even the cricket score or something, I don't know. Don was just saying what they're everywhere because we've asked for them, and it's like the universe is saying, "Here you go, let's have some fun with this." It's brilliant.
That's so fun to do that. Oh, that's so cool. I love that. I'm going to try that with
Yeah, try
my
it.
teenagers.
Yeah.
My daughter's probably more open to that kind of thing. My son, when he's a bit more relaxed, he'll say okay, and he'll get back into his playful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
try it. Get them to ask the universe. Show me some double figures or triple figures, or
yeah.
show me the ones. I want to see the ones today or the twos, and just see how that shows up. I love things like that. Just getting playful
Mm,
with it, just having some fun with it. Not because you're demanding to be shown things, but just set the intention and then forget it. Set and forget, and then it pops up and it reminds you that you did it, and it's more fun that way because you're not looking for it.
mm,
It's allowing the universe to send you what it wants to send you.
yeah. And also, I mean, that might help them actually at the moment because they're both doing their GCSEs. And I'm being the mama bear, trying to keep them all calm and chilled as best as I can. So I keep saying, "Don't worry, it's going to be fine, it's going to be fine." But I'll say, "Just look for the signs today. What can you spot today?"
Yeah, because they'll probably perform better if they can relax. It's a lot of pressure on very young
It
people when they
is.
do GCSEs.
It is.
The teachers do pile the pressure on, but if they can relax into it and have a bit of fun with it, it
Mm,
makes it less daunting and actually probably you probably get better results than being terrified. Like I was when I did mine. I was just terrified of messing
mm,
up my entire life by not getting good results, which of course it's not that huge a deal, really. I think that the pressure's far too intense for teenage.
mm. Oh, it is. It is. Especially for especially
Yeah,
sensitive
yeah. They don't need
teenagers.
any pressure point. Like we put enough
No.
pressure on ourselves, thank you, teachers. We don't
Yeah.
need any more from you.
Do you want to, before we come to the end of our chat, but do you just want to share about your shadow work? 'Cause that's something wanted to cover because it's something that you do a course on. And before we go into that, I just want to say as well, this week, even though this podcast is probably going to go out in the next couple of weeks, um, this week is Mental Health Awareness Week.
Ah, okay.
I think the whole month is dedicated to mental health awareness, but this week especially in the UK. Um, so I'll put in the show notes for this. There's an organization or a website I found out about recently that lists all of the organizations in globally that people can, wherever they are in the world, that people can turn to if they need support. It's a really good one.
Yeah.
I don't have it in front of me at the moment, but I'll put it in the notes for this show. Just wanted to mention that as we're talking about those kinds of issues to do with mental health and well-being. So do you want to, I'd love to hear about your shadow work
Yeah.
and how that helps people.
Yeah, sure. And I think shadow work is a well-known phrase, and it was Carl Jung, who is the Swiss psychoanalyst and psychiatrist, who first used the word shadow work and the shadow self when he talked about what our shadow self is. And probably the easiest way to describe it is the shadow self is formed by us repressing and denying certain parts of ourselves. And you might think, oh, why would we do that? But we do it naturally as we grow up. And this isn't pointing the finger of blame at anybody's parents or my parents or their parents. This is just how we have become a society where, as a child, perhaps you were, for an example, quite loud. If you were loud as a child, and maybe your parents thought, oh no, people are going to get irritated by that because you're really loud. So they told you, don't be loud. Nobody will like you if you're loud. You need to be quiet. So that naturally flamboyant, loud, comfortable, confident part of that child is rejected and shunned by the parent,
Mm-hmm.
pushed down into the shadow and denied. And the child learns to associate with a quieter, more calm version of themselves because that gets them love and that gets them appreciation, because they realize, if I behave in a really loud way, mum shouts at me and people frown at me and they don't look very happy. So they choose to push that part of themselves down. And then at school, if you are a bit silly and you're, like the class clown, if you're that kid that makes people laugh and, has a bit of fun, very often, certainly the school I went to was very strict, and you were told not to be, don't be silly, you need to behave yourself, and you're sort of, that you shun that part of you that wants to make everyone laugh and be a bit daft and a bit silly because you're shamed by the teachers. So again, that part gets buried and suppressed. Maybe if you're a boy, some boys, especially at my generation, were brought up not to allow to show emotion, and if they got upset and they cried, they would be told, oh no, you've got to be brave, you're a boy, you'll be a brave little soldier, and big boys don't cry, and all that nonsense, damaging nonsense that boys used to get taught. I hope they don't still, but they certainly used to, which is now why we have poor mental health in adult men, because they weren't allowed to be sensitive. So the sensitive, caring, compassionate, feeling part of a little boy that wants to show his feelings gets repressed and pushed down and denied. So that goes into the shadow. So we've all got a shadow self because of upbringing, schooling, society, culture, jobs, anywhere where other people put expectations on us to behave in a way that they think we should behave. We have parts of us that then become repressed because we're taught in a way that they're not lovable or they're not likable, or we get punished for behaving in that way. We're put on the naughty step, or we're ignored, or we get frowned at. So we've all got this buried part of us. And you might think, well, is that a bad thing? Do we want to all go around being shouty and loud? And maybe we're okay with what we've got. But what can happen when we deny those parts of us? They sabotage us because they're trying to come up, but we're pushing them down. And that's when you get mental health problems. That's when you get anxiety. That's when you get stress, because your own natural response to something, maybe you feel like being a bit silly. Maybe you want to get shouty and loud. Maybe you want to get angry. But we've been taught, no, people won't like that. So you bury it. Anger is a thing I think a lot of British people have repressed and rejected, because we're not an angry, we're overly polite, and we don't allow that natural human emotion of anger to come up very often, because lots of people are uncomfortable with confrontation. But by denying it, it causes that conflict within us of our natural emotions trying to come up and us saying no. No, people pleasing is another thing. We want to please people, because if people are upset with us, whatever we did that made them upset, maybe speaking our truth and they didn't like it, we push that down. So speaking our truth can be buried in the shadow. So doing shadow work doesn't mean we're going to create a nation of angry people. It means that we allow the natural human emotions that we are trying to display to come up, because if we don't, they will sabotage us and cause
Mm,
ill. Even if that means shouting into a pillow, you don't have to go around and get angry with people all day, but you need to release what's trying to come up.
definitely.
And
Yeah.
some of what's trying to come up could be really valuable. Being empathic and sensitive to men is a trait. We want men to be empathic and sensitive. We want them to do the shadow work to bring that part into the light. You might have courage buried in your shadow. You might have being able to project your voice and be a leader, but you were told as a kid you were bossy. Many girls my age were told not to be bossy. But actually, is that not just a leadership
Mm,
style trying to get out that we've repressed? Don't be bossy. You've got to be, a good little girl and sit there quietly. So you might find there's some real gold in your
mm,
shadow that you've repressed since childhood. So by doing shadow work, by gently exploring what's there and reflecting and journaling and asking the right prompting questions to bring all this stuff up, we can
mm,
transform ourselves, we can be more whole,
mm,
we can accept all of those parts of us without feeling shame about those parts, and we can release some of these hidden skills and gifts that we've buried that as adults would actually probably be really valuable to us. So it's a big subject area.
yeah, it's really fascinating and really sort of juicy
Mm.
if you feel like ready to explore it. I think going through menopause as I am now, it's 50 this year, and I've definitely got to the grumpy old woman stage where, apparently it's a fact that so as our estrogen lessens, it's almost like a holding space. Can hold less as women. And I've definitely got to that stage, but it's a positive thing because now I speak out for a lot more for things that I'm passionate about, or if I see something in the streets, certain behaviors, I will get involved. I won't just pass it by. I'll say, no, I think no, that's not right. Why are people walking past that? That isn't right, all those sorts of things. So yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing to um let that, whatever you want to call it, grumpy old woman or elder, wise elder,
Wise elder, I like that.
wise elder, yeah, side to come out. And because we've all got our role to play, haven't we? We've all got to, it's like doing this podcast as well. I mean, if you'd said to me 20 years ago, you'd go, oh, do a podcast, I'd be like, no, no, because I was always very quiet and shy as a child. And now I'm like, well, I don't really I don't really care what people think. This is the way I want to do it. I've got a voice. This is what I want to talk about. So, yeah, I guess more of the shadow can come out in a positive way, can't it? As you get older as well. But it's good to have the tools to recognize this earlier in life as well. I wish I'd known about the shadow perhaps when I was 20, you know. So what you're doing is providing people with that way of learning about it, creating awareness about it.
And
Mm.
it's something I wish we learned it earlier. I wish this sort of thing was taught at school to allow people
Mm.
who they want to be and not who society thinks they should be. Because I grew up and spent all of my 20s trying to fit in and be like everyone else. And I guess many of us do, but what a waste of time that was. And if I could just go back and not have
Yeah.
any of those anxieties about what people might think, oh, I better behave like that because that's what's expected. I was a massive people pleaser. I never spoke my truth. I'd have had a much nicer existence if I had known about this sort of thing back then.
Mm.
And I wasn't meant to. I was meant to learn it later and share it with people. And this is all part of my path and my journey. But this is why I'm passionate about sharing things like shadow work, because we should never feel ashamed of any parts of us. We might decide not to publicly display every single side to our character, and that's fine if it's a choice. but not because it's been programmed into us or we've been shamed by the society around us,
mm,
that we can't be who we want to be. And thankfully, I think growing up in the UK is fairly open minded, but there are some countries where you really can't be who you want to be because of your gender or your sexuality or your age. You're expected to behave in a very restricted way. And it's not quite that bad over here, thankfully. But I think
mm.
in some countries, that's really prevalent, that people are just not allowed to be themselves. And that's really sad.
Yes, we are very blessed in this country to have the freedoms that we do have. Self expression, like you say, and heartfelt prayers to all those people that might be struggling out there at the moment in other countries
Yeah, I think
because of, yeah.
until I started doing this work, I kind of took it for granted a bit. And then I thought, God, if I'd been born somewhere else, I might be treated very differently because of my
Mm,
gender.
mm,
And, I think that's not to say that it's perfect where we live. It's not, but it's better than in other places. And we need to keep working on that,
mm.
allow people to express who they are and who they want to be. It's definitely better now than it was 40 years ago. So we get in there. We just need to.
Yeah, we're getting there. I mean, yeah, we won't get into too much detail with that, but it's a lot better than it was, but there's
Yeah,
still room for change.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fabulous. Thank you, Melanie. Is there anything else you want to share before we end our chat?
I don't think so, really. No, I mean,
Mm,
I'll give you the link to. I'll give you the links to the crystals work course and the shadow work course. For anyone to take a look. Oh yes, there is actually my website. So
okay.
if
Yeah.
anyone wants to have a little nosy around the website, I do have in the menu. There's a page called freebies. So there's a few free downloads and stuff in there.
Mm,
If anybody enjoys the sorts of things that I share in the freebies, if you'll get a pop up when you go on my website saying, "Would you like to subscribe?" It's 100% free, and I'm intending, hopefully, I can continue to keep it completely free. Um, Signing up to the website gives you access to two hidden tabs. One of them says members only, and one of them says workshops. And it's a load more free resources, exercises. There's some mini workshops teaching things like dowsing with a pendulum to get answers, connecting to spirit guides. I'm just about to put one live this afternoon on doing intuitive card reading, just a beginner's workshop, just
oh, nice.
intuition development, all the things that I'm passionate about. I like to be able to do as much as I can for free. So my website is a hive of activity for lots of stuff, but if you sign up, you get even more. And then I send out a newsletter. So signing up means you'll get my newsletter, but I'm not one of those people that spam people's inboxes. I've unsubscribed from places before when I've had every day something in my inbox. My inbox is crazy anyway. I don't need it being even more crazy. So I don't bombard people. It's just if I put a blog live or my monthly newsletter that they will get by email.
Mhm. Thank you. I'll certainly be having an explore later. Thank you, Melanie, for your time and sharing what you've shared today. It's been really enlightening and really enjoyed talking to you as well. And you're only just down the road from me, so it'd be nice to meet you in person sometimes.
Yeah, that would be
Sometime.
lovely.
Yeah, yeah.
Cafes here, so you'll have to come up or I'll come to you.
Yeah, well, I love there's the 360 cafe, isn't there, which I like to cycle to.
Oh,
So
brilliant. Yeah, that's just down
yeah,
the road, so we could meet there. That would be really nice. And thank you so much for inviting me on today. It's been really lovely chatting to you.
lovely chatting to you as well. And I'll put your details in the notes of the show. Take care and see you again.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Claire.
Okay,
Take
bye.
care.
Bye.